Every day, billions of barrels of oil move silently across oceans, shaping not only economies, but the fate of nations. Yet beneath these waves and pipelines, a hidden system quietly powers America's global reach, one that most people never see, but everyone feels. It's called the petrodollar system, a financial arrangement forged in the shadows of the 1970s. This system doesn't just link oil and money, it anchors America's dominance in global finance, security, and influence. Most people know oil is crucial for modern life, and that the US dollar is the world's main currency. But few realize how tightly the two are bound, or how this connection underpins America's power far beyond its borders. The petrodollar system is more than an economic curiosity. It is a pillar of US supremacy in global trade, finance, and geopolitics, a system whose survival shapes the very structure of the international order. To understand today's world map of power, we must start with the story of how oil and the dollar became inseparable, and how that bond reshaped the destiny of nations. After World War II, America emerged as the world's economic powerhouse. At Bretton Woods in 1944, the US dollar was crowned the world's reserve currency, its value fixed to gold, and its influence stretching across continents. For decades, global trade flowed through the dollar, backed by America's economic might and gold reserves. But by the late 1960s, US spending on war and welfare strained the system, eroding confidence in the dollar's gold link. In 1971, President Nixon ended the dollar's convertibility to gold, unleashing a wave of uncertainty. The world's reserve currency was now backed by trust alone, and global leaders scrambled for stability. At the same time, oil was becoming the lifeblood of the global economy. The Middle East, led by OPEC, controlled vast reserves, and oil price shocks in the 1970s threatened to destabilize markets everywhere. Amid this turmoil, the United States struck a pivotal deal with Saudi Arabia, the world's leading oil exporter. In exchange for pricing oil exclusively in dollars, the US offered security guarantees, military support, and advanced weaponry. This arrangement soon spread to other OPEC members. Oil would be traded only in dollars, and in return, America would protect the region's regimes and ensure the safe flow of energy to the world. The consequences were immediate and profound. Every country needing oil now needed US dollars, creating a tidal wave of global demand for the American currency. This was the birth of the petrodollar system. Oil exporters accumulated vast surpluses of dollars, which they then recycled into US financial markets, especially by purchasing Treasury bonds. The system created a self-reinforcing cycle. Oil flowed out of the Middle East, dollars flowed in, and those dollars returned to America's financial system, fueling its growth and global reach. Imagine the journey. A barrel of oil leaves Saudi Arabia, is bought by Japan or Germany in dollars, and those dollars are then invested back into US government debt, funding American spending and military power. This vast network of flows transformed the US into not just an economic superpower, but the financial center of the world. Wall Street became the beating heart of global capital, drawing in investments from every oil-exporting nation. Geography played a critical role. The Middle East, sitting atop the world's largest oil reserves, became an energy choke point. The US, with its navy and alliances, ensured the security of these supply lines. America's ability to guarantee the free flow of oil through choke points like the Strait of Hormuz strengthened its strategic hand. Control over these arteries meant leverage over both friends and rivals. The petrodollar system delivered enormous advantages for the US. Constant global demand for dollars kept American borrowing costs low, enabling the government to run persistent deficits without triggering a crisis. This financial privilege allowed the US to sustain a vast military presence worldwide, project power far from home, and act as the world's lender and policeman, often at the same time. The US Treasury market became the world's ultimate safe haven. In times of crisis, nations and investors flocked to American bonds, reinforcing the dollar's dominance and deepening America's financial moat. But the petrodollar system also gave Washington powerful geopolitical tools. By controlling the main artery of global finance, the US could impose sanctions, freeze assets, and pressure adversaries with a stroke of a pen. Nations dependent on dollar-based trade found themselves exposed to US policy decisions, sometimes with devastating consequences. The dollar was not just a currency, it was a lever of influence. Behind the scenes, this system underpinned not only American prosperity, but its capacity to shape global events, alliances, and even the outcomes of wars. Yet as the world changed, so did the pressures on the petrodollar. Rising powers grew wary of America's financial reach and began searching for ways to escape its orbit. China, the world's largest oil importer, launched the Petro-Yuan, an effort to settle oil contracts in its own currency. Russia, facing U.S. sanctions, turned to gold and barter to bypass the dollar. Saudi Arabia and Gulf states, once pillars of the system, now explore new partnerships. They sign deals with Asian giants, consider accepting yuan for oil, and hedge their bets as global power shifts. The risk of de-dollarization has become a strategic concern. If major oil exporters and buyers shift away from the dollar, America's financial dominance could begin to erode. Such a shift would not just alter currency flows. It could transform alliances, reshape trade routes, and introduce new instability into the global system. The stakes are enormous. If oil is no longer priced in dollars, demand for U.S. assets could fall, raising America's borrowing costs and reducing its ability to finance military and diplomatic commitments. New currency blocks could emerge, anchored by China or regional powers. Competing financial systems would fragment the world economy, raising the risk of conflict and miscalculation. Case studies reveal how the petrodollar system amplifies America's leverage. When the U.S. imposed sanctions on Iran and Russia, access to the dollar-based financial system became a chokehold, crippling their economies. China's Belt and Road Initiative is more than infrastructure. It's an effort to build alternative trade routes and payment systems, reducing reliance on Western-controlled finance. The Ukraine war and the ensuing energy sanctions have tested the limits of dollar power. As Russia is pushed out of Western markets, it seeks new buyers and new currencies, challenging the old order. Local decisions, like a single oil contract signed in yuan or rubles, can send shockwaves through global finance, forcing banks, traders, and governments to adapt to a changing landscape. Each move to bypass the dollar, however small, is a signal. The system's foundations are being tested, and the world is watching for cracks. America, for its part, works to defend the petrodollar system through diplomacy, alliances, and a persistent military presence in the Gulf. Aircraft carriers, bases, and security guarantees remain central to this strategy. Yet the momentum for alternatives is growing. Digital currencies, regional payment systems, and new trade alliances all chip away at the dollar's monopoly. The future of the petrodollar system is uncertain. Some experts argue that its sheer scale and inertia will protect it for years. Others warn that a sudden shift could trigger financial turmoil and geopolitical realignment. What is clear is that the fate of U.S. global leadership is tied to the fate of the petrodollar. If the system falters, America's ability to shape world events could diminish. A breakdown would not just affect the U.S., it would reshape the world's balance of power, trade, and security, forcing every nation to reconsider its alliances and strategies. As new powers rise and old certainties fade, the question is no longer whether oil and the dollar are linked, but how long that link can endure and what comes after. The petrodollar system is not just an economic arrangement, it is a hidden engine of U.S. power, driving prosperity at home and influence abroad. But engines can stall, and systems can be disrupted. For decades, the world has relied on a single currency to price its most vital commodity. This has brought stability, but also vulnerability, a fragile peace built on financial trust and military might. The old assumption was that America's dominance was inevitable, sustained by its wealth and military. But the true source of power lies in the systems that connect money, energy, and security. Now, as rivals build alternatives and alliances shift, the smarter question is, who will control the rules of global trade when the old system is challenged? The answer will not be found in oil fields or stock exchanges alone. It will be written in the choices of nations, the architecture of financial networks, and the willingness of powers to defend or disrupt the status quo. In a world where oil still fuels ambition and rivalry, the currency it's traded in may decide who holds the keys to global power. The petrodollar system is a reminder that what seems technical or invisible can define the fate of empires. Its future will shape not just America's role, but the very structure of the global order. As trade routes shift, currencies compete, and alliances evolve, the world stands at a crossroads. The systems we take for granted are the very ones that, when challenged, reveal the true nature of power. The story of the petrodollar is not just about America or oil. It is about the unseen forces that bind nations together and the risks we run when those bonds begin to fray. In the end, the world's most important currency may not be dollars, yuan, or euros, but trust itself. When that trust is shaken, the balance of power can shift overnight. In the shadow of oil tankers and trading screens, the real contest is for control over the systems that make the modern world possible. And in that contest, even the invisible can change everything.